So today, we are going to continue our journey of discovery in ancient text. The purpose of which is not to just learn of what these ancient texts are, but to learn from them. They give us a glimpse into the ancient world and their beliefs. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a 4,000-year-old text, has spread worldwide across many cultures to this very day. Just like many ancient religious texts, aside from the Bible, the Epic of Gilgamesh has become comparably just as influential to many people. The difference being, of course, the Bible is a scriptural religious text meant to be taken seriously, as this epic is merely considered poetry. Or it could have been just the way people talked back then, because the scriptures also have many segments that could have been considered poetry by today's standards. So, what we are going to do is we are going to take a look at this and see what the true significance of this text really is. It is Babylonian in origin, so you know that it's going to be quite the tale. But hopefully, at the end of this presentation, we will have a better understanding of their world along with other texts we have reviewed. And we will be just one step closer to understanding the truth about our human past. So what do you say? You ready to take that journey with me? After all, there may be something there that you need to know. Absolute power does corrupt absolutely, and Gilgamesh was a king who possessed such power. As a result, he became a tyrannical leader. He wanted things done his way and ended up abusing his power. Now, this didn't sit well with the people he ruled over, so they prayed to the gods for a resolution. The gods heard the cries of the people and sent the antithesis of the king, Enkidu. A wild man of the forest, Gilgamesh at this time is considered to be a demigod, which would be the source of his powers of magic and superhuman strength. And after hearing about his abuse of this power, Enkidu would seek him out to relieve him of that power, reducing him down to that of a human. When Enkidu does finally catch up with Gilgamesh, there is conflict and they fight. And this is quite similar to a story we have heard before from the ancient Sumerian texts. There is an abuse of power, and brothers fight to restore balance. Enki and Enlil. Of course, one could speculate that Gilgamesh was a hybrid Nephilim giant, being part god and part human. And that is where it gets a bit confusing trying to keep track of who is who here. So anyway, what happens is Gilgamesh and Enkidu duke it out, only to have the fight end in a draw. And as a result, they find a common ground and become friends. Now there is a forest, a cedar forest in Lebanon, okay? Where resides the monster guardian of the forest, Humbaba, who both Gilgamesh and Enkidu seek to destroy and acquire his cedars to be taken back with them. So they find Humbaba, subdue and kill him, taking his head as well as the cedars of the forest. Now after this event, one of the goddesses takes notice of Gilgamesh, Ishtar, who is known to be a goddess but is also a prostitute. And she is impressed and turned on by what Gilgamesh has done. So she comes to him and proposes that he marry her. But because of her reputation that Gilgamesh is well aware of, he insults her and turns her down. This did not sit well with Ishtar, so she returned to her father requesting that he give her the bull of heaven to send down and punish Gilgamesh. threatening to raise the flesh-eating dead from the underworld upon the living if he did not comply with her request. What a spoiled brat, huh? Anyway, her father grants her power over the bull, Taurus, and she of course sends the bull down to Uruk to teach Gilgamesh a lesson. But the bull is slain by both him and Enkidu. Here's the problem. The monster of the forest and the bull of heaven served their purpose. Humbaba was placed in the forest to protect the cedars, and the bull had its place in the heavens, both placed there by the gods. So, the gods got together to decide what they should do about it, and they decided that one of them should die for such acts. They chose Enkidu. Enkidu dreamt of this meeting between the gods and the underworld, shortly after which he fell extremely ill and raving mad, and does eventually die. Now, Enkidu's funeral was like that of a king, and Gilgamesh, being his best friend, was devastated. Gilgamesh was so grief-stricken by his loss that he went crazy, and he realized that being a mortal meant that one day he too would die. But Gilgamesh also knew that there was another like him, who did possess the power of immortality, Utnapishtim, and soon he would travel to the ends of the earth to seek him out. Gilgamesh travels across the waters of death, and he eventually finds Utnapishtim, who tells him of how he became immortal. You see, once upon a time, one of the gods came to Utnapishtim, instructing him on how to build an ark to preserve him, his family, and mankind. Yes, this is the older version of the story of Noah. And so after the great flood, Utnapishtim had fulfilled his duties and was left with the gift of immortality, and therefore he stayed there on the island at the ends of the earth. After telling Gilgamesh this story, he also told him that he would not be granted such a gift because, of course, there were different circumstances here. But Utnapishtim would test Gilgamesh to see if he could even handle being immortal, and challenged him to stay awake for about a week straight. Now, Gilgamesh had already lost a lot of sleep because of his travels to find Utnapishtim. And upon accepting Utnapishtim's challenge to stay awake, he immediately falls asleep. I mean, he was out for the count. He slept so hard, he was out cold for a week. Waking up like, huh? What happened? Realizing then that he was not going to gain immortality. Of course, at this point, Gilgamesh understands that he has failed in his quest for immortality, but Utnapishtim tells him all is not lost and that there is a certain plant that exists that will make him young again. So Gilgamesh dives into the water and at the bottom discovers this plant. So he picks it and takes it home with him, not with the intention of using it himself, but he wanted to first test it on another man, not trusting what Utnapishtim told him. So on the way home, exhausted Gilgamesh decided that he would take a relaxing dip in the water, and so he removes his gear, and with that he also sets aside the plant of youth. While he is not looking, a snake comes along and is attracted to the plant and slithers away with it in its mouth. And because the plant really was the plant of rejuvenation, it turned the snake young, and the snake shed its skin behind it. Upon returning, Gilgamesh discovers that the plant is gone, and he knows that the snake had taken it. Not only does he know that a snake took it, but he realizes after seeing the shed skin that Utnapishtim was indeed telling the truth. And now he has completely failed his mission. And that completes the poetic tale of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So there are many sources for this story found in several tablets, because what happens is stories get told over and over and rewritten over and over. Archaeologists find these clay tablets and fragments, and because many of them have the same information retold, they can be pieced together to give a more complete story. One of the elements that is repeated in the story is the onset of the deluge. There are many references to the flood in the Gilgamesh tale. So now that we know a little something about Gilgamesh, let's examine this further. There is no doubt in my mind that once upon a time, there was a great deluge. As this story surrounds Mesopotamia, many geologists today agree that yes, there is evidence to support the event, such as prehistoric fossils found on mountaintops. But beyond that, we still have quite a mystery here because reading through the Epic of Gilgamesh, one wonders, was Gilgamesh a real person? Which parts of this poem are real and which parts are fabricated? Well, there are other texts that come out of ancient Sumer that may give us clues to the reality of this epic. One of the texts that comes out of ancient Sumer that is very telling is the Sumerian Kings list, and Gilgamesh is on that list. So what I want to do is just read a few sections of this Kings list, just so you can have a better understanding of the timeline of events and who the Sumerians say ruled right from the beginning. Now, before I read through the first few sections of this list, I want us to consider a few things here. One, when you look at today's world map, what you are looking at is the world post-flood. When you have massive flooding, what happens is you also have massive mudslides and earthquakes. You also have volcanism beneath the water surface in some areas as well. So if you have a global flood, then you also have many various changes to the land beneath the water. So the land masses, rivers, lakes, oceans, before the flood should have been completely different than what we see now, okay? For example, when you look at the West, North America, South America, and you look at the East, Europe, Africa, it's almost like these land masses would fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, right? And so many assume that they were joined at one point in history. But when you look at rivers cut through the land and you get a kind of paralleled erosion. So could the Atlantic Ocean be just one massive river? And if the Atlantic Ocean was formed like a river, then that means it wasn't always there, and the land beneath the Atlantic was once dry land that connected the western and eastern continents. Are you with me so far? The second thing I want us to consider is Enoch on this list, because the Sumerian Kings list reads very similar to how the Bible reads the lineage of Adam. That would mean that Adam, considering that he was the first man, would have technically been the first ruler or king, because we know that Enoch did rule and so did Methuselah. There are a lot of discrepancies in the names and the timeline. However, in spite of the many variations, the timing of the death of these rulers seems to come very close when matching up. The third thing that I want us to consider is, where does Nimrod come in with all of this? Some have actually theorized that Nimrod may be the same person as Gilgamesh. Just keep that in mind, as we will discuss Nimrod another time. So here is what the Sumerian Kings list reads. And I threw a chart up so that you can better visualize the kingship and who some scholars believe these kings were in the Bible. But of course, we don't know for sure. So this is how the Sumerian Kings list translates. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. In Eridu, Alaulim became king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alahar ruled for 3,600 years. Two kings, they ruled for 64,800 years. Then Eridu fell, and the kingship was then taken to Ba-Tabira. In Ba-Tabira, Enmeneluna ruled for 43,200 years, and Mengalana ruled for 28,800 years. Dumazid, the shepherd, ruled for 36,000 years. 3 kings, they ruled for a total of 108,000 years. Then Batabira fell, and the kingship was taken to Larag. Enzipad Zedana ruled for 28,800 years. 1 king, he ruled for 28,800 years. Then Larag fell, and the kingship was then taken to Zimbir. In Zimbir, Emendurana, who some suspect to be Enoch, I guess, became king. He ruled for 21,000 years. 1 king, he ruled for 21,000 years. Then Zimbir fell, and the kingship was taken to Kurapag. In Kurapag, Ubaratutu became king. He ruled for 18,600 years. 1 king, he ruled for 18,600 years. In 5 cities, 8 kings, they ruled for a total of 241,200 years. Then the flood swept over. Now after the flood had swept over and the kingship had descended from heaven, once again, the kingship was formed in Ki, or should I say Kish. And then you have a bunch of kings. I won't read through them all. But what's interesting is you do get to the king Etana, the shepherd, who ascended to heaven and consolidated all the foreign countries. He became king and ruled for 1,500 years. His son Bali ruled for 400. In Kish, we have 23 kings. They ruled for a total of 24,510 years, 3 months, and 3.5 days. Then Kish was defeated and the kingship was taken to Eana. In Eana, Megiagasar, the son of Utu, became lord and king. He ruled for 324 years. Megiagasar entered the sea and disappeared. Enmerkar, the son of Megiagasar, the king of Unug, who built Unug, became king. He ruled for 420 years. And 745 are the years of the dynasty of Megiagasar. Lagalbanda, the shepherd, another shepherd, again, ruled for 1,200 years. Dumazid, the fisherman, whose city was Kuara, ruled for 100 years. Now I could have sworn Dumazid already had his rule before the flood. Maybe this is another guy. Anyway, he captured Enme-Baragasi, single-handed. Gilgamesh, whose father was a phantom, the lord of Kalaba, ruled for 126 years. Ur-Nagal, the son of Gilgamesh, ruled for 30 years. Then we have a few more kings that ruled, a total of 12 kings. They ruled for a total of 2,310 years. Then Unug was defeated and the kingship was taken to Urim. I'll leave a link in the description box if you want to take a closer look at the translation. I have to say, the more you look into this stuff, even though all these different names and dates are very confusing, you can still paint a picture in your mind of who's who and what actually happened during that time period. With all that was going on back then, it does make you wonder how much of the Epic of Gilgamesh is non-fiction. It's all coming together slowly, and as we look into more of these ancient texts, we may experience several aha moments. Hope you all enjoyed this presentation. Stay tuned as we have much more to cover on several different topics. So everyone, stay awake, stay aware, stay safe, and I'll talk to you all soon.